Welcome, everyone. My name is Dave McCall. We're going to be going through the do's and don'ts of Zendesk migrations today. So if you're here to learn about how to get from Zendesk to Salesforce, you're in the right place. We are just a couple of points of order here. We're going to go about 30 to 45 minutes today. There will be some time for a Q&A at the end. If you have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A tab, and we'll either answer them in line or we'll answer them at the end. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. And great. So as I said, my name is Dave McCall. I am the Senior Director of Solution Architecture here at Thunder. Thunder is a Salesforce partner. We are very proud of what we've been able to build in the last 2 years of doing consulting on the Salesforce platform. We are a full-fledged partner. We do basically the whole Salesforce platform, including MuleSoft, Slack, and Capado. So we're really glad to talk to you about any of those things or anything you're trying to do on the Salesforce platform. But today we're going to talk a little bit about service, which works really well for me. I've spent just about my whole career in service. I've been doing CRM implementations for about 23 years now. For the last 5 years, I've been doing that in the Salesforce ecosystem. I grew up in the contact center. I love the business of service, and I love the technology that enables it. So I've had a chance to do quite a bit with it. I've worked with just about every kind of customer in every vertical and every size. And as you can see, I've done quite a bit of certification to get prepared to do both delivery of Salesforce and of Service Cloud Voice. So let's talk about why we're here. We're here because we know that the demand on the contact center has just never been greater. If you look at the statistics, 88% of leaders say that customers have higher expectations than they've ever had before. And 43% of service agents say they just don't have enough time to do great customer service. We're still seeing that companies are treating their contact centers like a cost center rather than as an opportunity for growth, but they're still kind of pushing for growth. So they're treating you like a cost center, but also asking you for cross-sell, upsell, and to be able to generate revenue yourself. And so those things are getting harder and harder to do, and it takes the right people, it takes the right platform, it takes the right process in order to get there. We all know that in the past, it was enough to manage your handles and wait time. It was enough to have tools that worked and you channels that kind of went together or didn't go together. We worried about case closure and just how fast we could get there. We built self-service community or self-service methods that were clumsy, that were cold. And again, we were treated like a cost center. But these days, we're looking for faster engagement. We're looking for integrated agent desktops where agents don't have to swivel chair in order to serve customers. We want consistent cross-channel experiences, the same experience no matter what channel you're on as a customer. And we want to focus on that customer experience, not just on how we're going to close a case. It's more important than ever to get high CSAT, not just quick case closure. And we're looking for that conversational, we're looking to make people feel valued and wanted, that conversational cross-channel self-service, not just self-service that just gets them the answer and gets them out the door. And we're driving revenue in the contact center like we never have before. So how do we do that? Well, like I say, it takes the right people, process, and platforms to do that. I'm convinced that there's no better platform than Salesforce's Service Cloud in order to do that, in order to generate those great experiences that we're looking for. I'm guessing that most of you are here because you're considering a move from Zendesk to Salesforce, and you're trying to decide how you are going to do that and how to do that successfully. So that's what I'm here to talk about for the rest of this presentation. Hopefully you're coming to Salesforce for the things, the complete feature set that it has, things like reporting, better reporting, Einstein, Genie, Slack integration, Service Cloud Voice, Tableau integration. So that complete feature set that we're looking for, that's going to give you more ability to serve customers in that higher touch way that we need to do it. Maybe you're looking for that more extensibility. So things like flows or other no-code tools that are offered on the platform. greater integration capabilities with a full API that works on just about every object that is in the system, as well as integration capabilities out to your other systems to decrease that swivel chair and make that agent experience better. And that whole extension framework that comes along with Salesforce. So we can do almost everything, no or low code, but the extension framework allows us to build components or classes or apps that allows to extend the platform in ways that are useful, that keep the swivel chair down, and that will upgrade well on the platform as the platform continues to grow. Maybe you're coming across because Zendesk got bought by a private equity company, and since the acquisition, the future of that product is uncertain. You're not sure how much the company is going to continue to invest in R&D. None of us know, but we do know that Salesforce is investing about $5 billion every year in R&D. And so we know this platform is going to continue to grow and expand. And if you watch Salesforce's release notes in every, 3 times a year, you read the release notes, you're seeing that even on products that have been around for a long time, like Sales or the Service Cloud, those products are continuing to innovate. They're continuing to get better every release. Or maybe you're looking for the larger ecosystem. So whether that's a larger ecosystem for partners, I think there's like 9,000 of us in the ecosystem at this point, or you're looking to be able to grow, bring in your own developers, your own admins, and you're looking for people who know the platform already. A platform like Salesforce, there's just a lot of people out there who know the platform. It's a huge ecosystem, but not just big, but it's an active and excited ecosystem where you can Google and say, hey, how can I do something? And there are 10 people ready to answer your question. Besides that, you've got that a number of connectors that connect to Salesforce. If you built a connector to a CRM, you built a connector to Salesforce in all likelihood. And a large ecosystem full of ISVs, people who are building on products on top of the platform or products alongside the platform. And they're putting those in the App Exchange. So you've got this huge App Exchange full of apps that can bolt onto the product very well and have been tested and are ready to go. Or maybe you're interested because you're looking for a platform that's easy to learn, and you can't get a better learning platform than Trailhead, where Salesforce is essentially giving away the enablement of their product and putting it online and easy for people to get to. Those are the reasons we're seeing people migrate from Zendesk to Salesforce more often than not. Besides the getting onto a single CRM platform, they're already maybe on Salesforce for their sales, and they want to get onto Salesforce for their service as well. But we're also seeing people really interested in these other common reasons that people are coming across. That's why we think people are probably going, but unfortunately, there's no turnkey solution for migrating your business from Zendesk to Salesforce. I know I've tried to build a one-button solution where you press a button and it takes you from Zendesk to Salesforce. As far as I know, that doesn't exist now, but there are lots of things that can be done to make a migration from Zendesk to Salesforce easier. What we know is that it's important to think about how you implement in order to get the full value of a platform. What Gartner said about Salesforce is that service providers that are implementing Salesforce are inconsistent in the way they implement it, which leads to troubled implementations, and you end up with with customers who aren't getting the full value of a great platform. So you've got a great platform, but they're just not taking advantage of it. So I'm going to help you think about how you would do an implementation of Salesforce, migrating from Zendesk, to make sure that you are getting the full value of the platform. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about how you approach a migration. First thing you have to do is decide how much change you're going to introduce right away. You're going to make some changes. Changing platforms, period, is going to introduce a lot of change to your team. Zendesk and Salesforce provide similar capabilities. The idea is the same. In Zendesk, you're taking tickets, you're solving tickets, you're working with your knowledge base to solve those tickets, and then you're delivering an answer to the customer, closing the ticket. In Salesforce, it's a similar concept. You're opening a case, you're working within your knowledge base to help solve that case, and you're closing the case. So there's a similar capability, but even right at the beginning, the terminology is different. It's tickets versus cases. But it's more than that. There's lots of extra features that can be added on in Salesforce that you didn't even have available to you in Zendesk. So you have to make some decisions. Are you going to take advantage of every feature that's available to you, or are you going to try and make Salesforce work the way Zendesk worked before? That's not just features, not just feature to feature, but there's also some things like routing that work slightly differently between the two products. So you have to make decisions. How far am I going to try and make it work like it does today, or change your processes to meet the tools? As you can see, the more you go down the make it work like it does today, the more complexity there is to the implementation, the more you're going to be wrestling against the system, the more you're going to kind of hurt the foundation that you're building for future improvements. The more you use Salesforce out of the box, the more capabilities you have to take advantage of future improvements of the platform. However, the more you change your processes to fit the tools, the more you're going to be disrupting your agents. So you need to take into account both of those pieces, and you have to decide how much change your team can tolerate. And you got to think about how you're going to manage that change. There's no right answer here, but my recommendation to customers is that they avoid either of the extremes. It's probably a bad choice to totally go towards the make it work like it does today, or to totally go towards the let's change our processes in every single way so we can meet the tool. What you need to think about is what must stay the same, and then you should be willing to compromise on the things that you can. We generally recommend folks cheat more towards the let's change our processes to fit the tool than towards the make it work like it does today. I would cheat that direction, but where you fall exactly within that spectrum is up to you. Secondly, let's talk about new features and how many you should introduce. In any scenario you're talking about, things are not going to be the same for your customers. They're going to be disrupted. Or your agents, I'm sorry. They're going to be disrupted. It's going to work different. And again, there's no right answers here. But for every new feature that you introduce, you're going to disrupt your users more. But on the other hand, you are going to be disrupting them significantly anyway. So maybe now's the time to do that disruption and add a few features onto the product. For every new feature you add, you're going to be adding on timeline and risk to the project. So if your project needs to be delivered in 12 weeks, but you tell me you need to implement every feature of Salesforce, then we probably have a problem. You probably don't have the timeline to handle that, or even if you had the timeline, it's going to add a lot of risk to the timeline to try and bolt on every single feature that Salesforce offers to you. That said, there are some economies of scale in general. When you're working with an implementer like Thunder, there's economies of scale of doing as much in one project as you can get done. For every new feature that you intro, you're going to be adding to the use case for users of why you change platforms on them. If you build the exact same platform in Salesforce that you had in Zendesk, and it feels like that to the users are going to say, why did you change on me? Why did you make any changes at all if we've just got the same product that's just on a different platform? However, if you do, the more you do, the more trouble users are going to have absorbing all the changes that are happening. And for every new feature you introduce, each of those features in the Salesforce ecosystem generally, or the Salesforce platform, are generally there to get you a return on your investment, whether that's adding to your customer satisfaction, increasing your customer satisfaction, decreasing your handle time, decreasing the time to proficiency for an agent. You're going to get a quicker return on the investment if you take advantage of more of the features in general. But they generally cost more upfront. So it's going to cost you a little bit more upfront to get that return on your investment over the long haul. So a lot of this is going to be driven by your budget. You're going to have to decide how much time you can spend on this and how much money you can spend on an implementation of Salesforce. And as you make those decisions, that's going to drive a lot of what features you can absorb at any given point in time. But just keep in mind, and I can't emphasize this point enough, for every new thing you introduce to your agents, you need to drive an investment in change management. So every new thing you add you should increase your change management effort or budget throughout the whole thing. So when you're thinking about change management, think about how different is this for my agents, and then plan for how you're going to communicate those changes, how you're going to get people on board with those changes, how are you going to find champions who can help you help get people excited about those changes, how are you going to enable your team, and how are you going to train. think about all those things as you continue to work through which features you're going to introduce. Now, very specifically, let me talk about some of the features that we see people introduce that make sense or don't make sense. I would say, starting at the top, omni-channel routing offers a significant benefit over the way most people are doing routing in Zendesk. So that would be the first place I would start, and I would say you should strongly consider doing your routing omni-channel and building that functionality. Now, you can do a lot of different ways of routing cases to agents. They can cherry pick from a queue, or we can push them to the agents from a couple different ways, and they can have them pick them up. But omnichannel routing offers so many capabilities, and I don't even really want to go through all of those, but it is something to certainly look through when you're moving from Zendesk to Salesforce. Now, while you're moving, you might consider adding channels. Adding channels helps decrease the contacts from a higher cost channel. So, we're all trying to get phone costs down. Phones generally are our most expensive channel. So if we can get get contacts to chat or SMS or manage the social channels better, we can usually justify those costs. If you're not using a knowledge base today, and most Zendesk customers are, but if you're not using a knowledge base today, today is a day to think about whether you want to invest in a knowledge base. It's also a good day to think about how you organize your knowledge base and whether it's organized the right way. So think about making changes maybe to your knowledge base today as you're migrating from Zendesk. Bots are a great deflection tool. I know Zendesk has some bots as well. So it's possible we're migrating a like for like on your bot, but bots are, if you're not using them today, they're a great deflection channel. There's some functionality that can be added onto the Salesforce platform with little effort, and they upgrade easily, and they can be upgraded later. So not all bots are alike. Great bots, I think, are generally integrated and have some integrations into other systems that are answering questions for customers that agents are generally answering. But you can do easy bots like answering directly from your knowledge base with limited, without working too hard. And then the last one I would say is you can think about app exchange packages that can be added easily. Generally, app exchange packages are a little easier to add than maybe building out custom functionality. So things like case swarming or building on RMAs or shipping notifications, integrating with Jira, those are things we see very often coming from an app exchange package. Those are things I think are worth considering in your first implementation of Salesforce. And the ones I generally would shy away from would be things like Einstein for Service. All Einstein and all the other machine learning capabilities of the Salesforce platform require a certain critical mass of data before they're of any use to anybody. So maybe it's good to add those on in that second phase of your implementation. And maybe that's something you might want to wait on. Now, I know it offers a lot of benefits, and it's exciting, and that may even be one of the main reasons you're thinking about moving to the platform, is to get some of that, some of those machine learning capabilities that exist on the platform. But you may just need to wait before you get those capabilities added on. Service Cloud Voice, I am a big fan of this product. I've spent the last, must be going on 3 years now, implementing the product. I have a lot of respect for what it does. I think there's never been anything like it in the way that telephony integrates with the platform. That said, unless you have to, maybe this first implementation isn't the right time to also move your telephony over. So if you're already using a different telephony provider, and that telephony provider has a CTI integration into Salesforce, maybe the first implementation of Salesforce, you don't move your telephony. That said, for those of you who are using Zendesk Talk, you might, if you move off the Zendesk platform, you're going to also have to move your telephony, and it might be time to consider using voice as your telephony. If you're going to be making a move anyway, maybe that's the right move to make. Integrations are one of those things where there's no one size fits all rule. You may be integrated, your Zendesk environment may be integrated with some other products already. So you need to move those integrations just so you have parity. In those cases, I think that's something you might have to do. But any new integrations potentially can wait to make that first implementation as seamless and smooth as possible. The goal to have everything on one platform is certainly an admirable goal. It is where my head would be at if I was a leader of an organization. I'd be trying to make sure that I was consolidating platforms as much as I could. So I definitely don't want to dissuade people from trying to get, take advantage of the entire Salesforce platform. In some time frame, you want to do that. But if you're not currently on sales, maybe your Zendesk to Salesforce migration isn't the right time to also implement sales, but maybe it is. Let's have that conversation, but let's be real clear about when it's time to do that. Sales, revenue, marketing cloud, commerce, if you don't need to do them right now, maybe now's not the right time to do them. More often than not, what I'm finding is we're talking to customers and we're up against some kind of Zendesk contract renewal. And when we're up against that contract renewal, it's better if we don't add in any additional risk. All right, so when we talk about how long a project takes, what's going to take up all that time? So I'll start with the easy part. How long does a Zendesk migration project take? We find that we're doing them in somewhere between 12 and 24 weeks. This slide is basically showing you what drives that time frame. The long poles in the tent, as we call them, are things like data migrations and integrations more often than not. Now, most importantly, the thing I will say as a general rule is don't migrate anything you don't have to if you're trying to keep costs low or keep your timeline short. That's the easiest way to save on your costs. Don't take on some new integration if you don't need to, and don't migrate 6 years of data if you only need one. Those are the easiest ways to keep things down. Because a lot of these lines, if you're looking at them, things like case management or your community or your knowledge, there's really not a lot of choice. We have to do those migrations. You need case management in order to do the job, but you don't necessarily need, like I say, 6 or 7 years worth of data in order to do the job. So that's where we find we can shrink timelines if we need to shrink timelines. So if you come to me and you ask me how long it's going to take to do your Zendesk to Salesforce project, and I tell you it's 24 weeks, and you ask me where we can cut, my answer is more often than not, it's going to start with, well, let's talk about your data migration. So let's talk about data migration. We've seen a lot of things happen in data migration. As that longest pole in the tent, how do we make those data migrations less risky? Well, the first thing we can do is migrate just as little as possible. So let's think about some of the options we have here. First and foremost, can we start fresh? Do we have to migrate anything? I know the first instinct for almost everybody is let's migrate everything we've got in Zendesk. Let's get it into Salesforce, then we can report on it from within Salesforce. That's, again, an admirable goal to get everything reported in one place. That's great. But if you don't need to, if you can start fresh, you save yourself from putting in a bunch of data that doesn't perfectly fit. There is a difference between how a Zendesk ticket and a Salesforce case are architected within the two systems. So you are fitting I don't want to say a square peg into a round hole, like maybe an oblong peg into a round hole is what we're doing. So if we can avoid doing that work to kind of fit them together and start fresh, so you're just starting with your data on day one and it's all Salesforce data, that would be my first recommendation, if you can do it. Now, you probably can't do it. In fact, I almost never have a customer say they can't. So let's talk about what we have to migrate. Can we migrate only the active tickets? Because we don't want to lose the context of tickets that are currently open in the system. Can you do that? If you can, maybe that's an option. If not, let's talk about what the least amount of data you could live with. Now, I would say, as a general rule, I'm finding customers are saying they need about 2 years of data in Salesforce from their Zendesk platform. Now, that rule isn't a hard and fast rule. I don't know why that rule is the rule that I'm seeing, but it tends to be what people tell me. Now, there are some things that drive this. I am not your lawyer, so I don't necessarily know that you need 7 years of data in your platform in order to be able to, meet your compliance needs. Or I also don't know the opposite, where you need to be purging every 90 days, or else you've got data that that might be a problem for you. So those are things you need to work out with your business. What do I need to have on the platform, or what do I need to not have on the platform? But just because you need to keep 7 years of data doesn't mean you need to keep 7 years of data in your transactional system. So we've seen some clever approaches to how people are migrating or not migrating data, as the case may be. What we're finding is some customers are going directly from Zendesk into their data warehouse, and they're not bringing the data into Salesforce at all. So if they need to get information about past cases that were in Zendesk, they just go to their data warehouse. And in fact, what we're finding is a lot of customers are doing that, and then they're data warehousing their data from Salesforce as well into the same tables. They're doing the work to kind of fit that data together in the data warehouse, and then they do all their long-term historic reporting out of their data warehouse using whatever BI tools they have today. Or we're seeing some people do integration instead of migration. One of the things I think is most interesting is we've got a couple customers recently who have they're going to keep a single Zendesk license for a couple of years, so that if they ever need to go back for compliance reasons and just see what a case looks like, they're going to go and grab that, go to Zendesk and get that data using that one license that they have. But for everything going forward, they're just doing things in Salesforce. I think that's novel and interesting. One of the things that I find, if you're talking about the long poles in the tent on a data migration, one of the things that we find is kind of a tough one is migrating attachments. And this depends a little bit on how you use attachments, how your customers use attachments. So if your customers are sending you a lot of images, a lot of videos, a lot of paperwork, and so 50% or more of your cases tickets have attachments on them, or you have lots of attachments on some of your cases. So you've got maybe over a few years, you've got a few terabyte of attachments just sitting there. That gets really hard to migrate across for a variety of reasons, not least of which is it just takes time to move terabytes of data across the internet. So if you can skip attachments, maybe you do. Maybe you don't need the attachments forever. You just need the context of the cases. That's one of those places where I think you can think about cutting a corner. One of the things that we've seen also is we've seen customers export cases as PDFs. So they've got now a PDF of tickets, I'm sorry. So they've got Zendesk tickets, PDFs of every Zendesk ticket. They've got them somewhere in a repository. And so if I do need to go back and see those tickets, I can go grab them at any time. They might even make those available to agents. So if an agent is historically working with a customer, they can go into that folder and say, okay, what are some of the cases or tickets that this customer had open a year ago or 2 years ago? None of this is one size fits all. What is most important to consider is what are the practical applications of actually having this data in your transactional system. If you talk to your agents and really talk to your agents, if you ask the question, how often do you go back to a case that was open more than a week ago, a month ago, 6 months ago, and you find out what those answers actually are, you might find out you don't need that much data. If agents aren't going back to look at historic data, then you don't need it. Now, I can't speak for your business. Maybe your business is one where people are going back to look a long distance, in which case the answer gets a little easier. And that answer is maybe we need to migrate some data. The other no one size fits all answer here as well is that you can mix and match some of these things. So maybe you're going to migrate active tickets and all of the attachments that go on the active tickets, but you're going to skip the attachments for any ticket that's already closed. That's a hybrid approach between these things, but it'll save you some time and money as we go. All right. Now, let's talk about timing. Let's talk about the practical calendar that we have in front of us, which is if I tell you that our project takes about 12 weeks to do, and your Zendesk contract expires in 12 weeks, then we're probably already too late, because we also have to do some things you have to do some contracting with Salesforce. You have to do some contracting with your system implementer. So you've got some things you have to do in order to get prepared to start that 12-week program. And Thunder can't be the only implementer on the block who doesn't have a lot of resources sitting on the bench just waiting to start the project. So we do have a little bit of a wait, usually about 2 weeks before we start a project. So if you signed a contract with us today, we'd start in about 2 weeks, and then 12 to 24 weeks from then, you would actually get to your deployment. So what I'm hearing far too often is, my Zendesk contract ends in 9 weeks. Can you get me onto Salesforce? And my answer is, not responsibly, I can't. I can generally, I could put together a timeline. It will be high risk. It's not anything that we love doing. We would be happy to talk to you about whatever your constraints happen to be and see if we can't help you fit. But responsibly speaking, if you don't have at least, let's say, 18 weeks between now and when your Zendesk contract expires, then we might be a little too late. That said, Zendesk might let you go month to month on your contract. One of the things that we're finding is when you talk to Zendesk about going month to month on a contract, most people at Zendesk know exactly why you're asking. And so they're not real excited about the idea of going month to month with you. And they'll do what they can to try and keep you around. Of course they will. So that's generally not a great way to do things. So all I'm asking is, if you are considering a Zendesk migration and your Zendesk contract expires in the next 6 months, talk to us now, or talk to another system integrator now and get that project started. It's time to figure out what the timeline is going to look like. It's time to get the budget settled. It's time to start doing those things. If you're doing it anytime in the next 6 months. If you've got a Zendesk contract expiring in 9 months, talk to us anyway. Let's get that timeline out there. Then you know what your timeline looks like, and we've got a little bit of extra time to think about it. If your Zendesk contract doesn't expire for 2 years and you're not going to do this until your Zendesk contract expires, well, then maybe we don't have to talk just yet. But I think the earlier you talk to us, the better. We'd be happy to talk to you about what your project might look like. We at Thunder have done dozens of these. I personally have been a part of dozens of Zendesk to Salesforce migrations. So we have a lot of thoughts and plays and ways to get this done well, that we can help you lower that risk. We can help you think through all the things you need to think through, kind of turn over all the rocks in your Zendesk implementation now to figure out how you can get this migration done as easy as possible. Hopefully, some of these tips that I gave you along the way are things you could be thinking about, things that will help you make some of those decisions. But if you need any help, again, we're happy to talk to you. This is what we do. We'd be happy to talk you through it as part of that, as part of thinking through how your project might go. So with that, that's everything I had prepared. I understand we're going to take some questions as we go here, and I'd be happy to field whatever questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Dave. Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay Gadd, and I'm the Corporate Marketing Director at Thunder. I know Dave shared a lot of really helpful tips with you guys, so I hope that you enjoyed this session. We did have a question come in. The knowledge management team feels that their job is far more confusing in Salesforce over Zendesk. For example, having to create articles on the knowledge object and then manage the articles on the site. We know we can set up the mapping to topics within knowledge, but have found this unintuitive and hard to measure success as there is a delay in the article becoming visible. Do you have any best practices on setting up a non-admin team to be able to manage knowledge?
Well, I feel your frustration. I understand exactly what you're seeing. One of the things I failed to mention is I was actually a Zendesk customer for several years, so I'm pretty aware of how that used to work, or how it's been a while since I was on, but how Zendesk managed knowledge, and it was pretty straightforward. You create an article and it shows up on your website. Salesforce has a little different philosophy around how knowledge is managed. There's a little bit more control and flexibility around the presentation versus the object itself, as well as where it shows up, because Salesforce isn't thinking just a single community. Like Zendesk is kind of you've got your customer community and you've got your knowledge, and they're intertwined. Salesforce is thinking, well, you might have knowledge that is in topics that are on your partner community and some that are on your customer community, maybe some on your platinum customer community. So there's a little bit more of that separation of layers. There's an advantage, of course, to that, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's easier in some cases, or not in some cases. It tends to be a little more work to manage. What we've done a few times is actually build out a couple custom components on a knowledge base to make it a little more straightforward, where it's a little more, you publish the article and it shows up on your website. It means you're moving away from what Salesforce calls topics and more towards something a little more custom, like what we call a category. But that said, that's just one solution to the problem. The second thing I would say is, this is another place where it's probably enough, or at least a part of it is about enablement. So it's a little bit about how can we get folks so that they know exactly why they're doing what they're doing, when to do the right thing, and what are the steps to do it. So this is another place where I would say, as part of the migration, you definitely want to invest in some change management, some training, and how you're going to enable your team on how to get these things, the same things they were doing before, accomplished on the new platform. I know that's not a perfect answer. We'd have to get into the specifics around kind of where your frustrations are, but if it is what I anticipate it is, it's that create your knowledge and then go over and publish it in a topic. We have a couple ways to kind of get around that and make it a little more like a Zendesk knowledge base.
Thanks, Dave. And we did have another question come in. How do you recommend timing on a full transition to the total Salesforce suite?
That is a very tough question, because the full Salesforce suite is that's a lot. There's a lot in the full Salesforce platform. So depending on what we're talking about, whether we're talking about, and frankly, I'm not sure I know anybody who's using the full Salesforce suite, but whether we're talking about sales, CPQ, revenue, whether you're a part of any of the verticals, so you're talking about manufacturing or communication, media, technology, so you're using any of those, or healthcare. So some of those pieces, whether you're talking about commerce for B2B or B2C, whether you're talking about marketing and what parts of marketing you're talking about, there's really just a lot to the platform. A full migration of everything you're doing onto the Salesforce platform, using every product or many of the products, let's say most of the products that Salesforce advertises as their own products, and I haven't even begun to list them out in that list I just gave you, would be a multi-year project or program, I would think. That said, that's probably not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is prioritize what you have and build sort of a backlog of projects that you'd like to complete. Find a partner that you love working with. I'd love for Thunder to be that partner. We're working hard to make sure our customers love Salesforce forever. So find a partner that you like working with and build a roadmap for how you're going to get to where you're going to go. And then hold that roadmap loosely, like you would almost any roadmap. It's going to change and ebb and flow as you continue to work through the program. You're going to find that your priorities change, as well they should, because your business is going to change over time and the market conditions are going to change. So think about it as potentially 1 to 2 year program to get you all the way across. And again, that depends a lot on the size of your business as well. If the person who asked this question is the US government, then it's more than 2 years. If this person who asked is a small to medium-sized business, then 1 to 2 years is probably a reasonable thought.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate that. All right, those are all of the questions that came in during the webinar, but should you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Thunder and to Dave at any time. We will be sharing a recording of the session via email with all of the registrants. Again, we thank you for your time. We hope you found this content helpful, and thank you to Dave, who is our awesome Salesforce implementation expert.
Thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure speaking with you today.